Good evening, cult members, and welcome to Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Janice.
This is our spoiler review of episode 4 of WandaVision. Named, we interrupt this program.
Right.
Okay, can we talk about the names, about how they've been like spot on, now in color, and like okay.
Yep.
This is going to be a spoiler discussion, reaction, review. I'm going to use all of those words because this one broke us. My brain is swimming with thousands of different ideas and thoughts and comments, and
We got many answers and now have many new questions.
yes, I took the question sheet I had that was like, and I balled it up and threw it, and now I've got another one that's this, and just, okay, let's start. I want to start with the way this episode starts. I actually just went back while you were outside and rewatched the beginning. There's no title card, no entrance song.
Yeah.
There's no title. It's just and it's not quite a cold open because it's a black screen coming into color, and it's Monica Rambeau the unsnapping,
right? Which we've never. We saw that in
Homecoming.
but not. It wasn't quite. This,
No, not
like,
Homecoming. Far From Home. Far From Home. When all the students started showing back up and
right.
stuff. Yeah.
But this is like super chaotic, and like what happens. One of the things they haven't shown is what happens if you're occupying the same space as someone who unsnaps.
Yeah. Right. I just.
And they unsnap where they
blipped from, and and just like the chaos. Like, I've thought about it, like the chaos of the blip being reversed, the snap being reversed. Like, what does that mean? Except I haven't really gone deep into it because we got like the end game, like the big. We got everything we wanted to get out. The Avengers Assemble and Mjolnir with Cap and all.
And the reveal of everybody back.
Go, and then everybody showing up in the portals.
Yeah.
But the rest of the world, the common folk, like what happens? And so they show it, and I just it takes this really weird thing we've been watching, but really enjoying it, and takes that and says, "Oh yeah, by the way, it's here."
Right.
And they put a pin in the exact moment of where they are in the story. Bang.
In time. Yep. We know what
it is.
Year
2023.
Right.
It's 3 weeks after the snap, 3.5 weeks after the unsnapping.
Right.
And we get Monica, who is a known agent of S.W.O.R.D., has been in space, talks about other Avengers who are out in space, i.e. Captain Marvel.
Right.
And goes back to S.W.O.R.D., and she's the only one that goes back. And I just, like, that alone in this episode was enough to break my brain.
Right. There's a lot to unpack later with all of that and what it means.
Yeah.
And what it means.
Sure. First assignment back is a terrestrial event, and
She's been grounded.
And she's grounded, so she has to go help this FBI agent who ends up being Jimmy Woo, who is Scott Lang's babysitter in Ant-Man 2.
Ant-Man.
So it's nice to bring the actor and the character back and everything.
Right.
Randall Park plays Jimmy. So it was nice to have him and have him be like the comic relief. But
which is what he is in Ant-Man.
He is in Ant-Man, but he's much more serious, but he's still the comic relief in this episode.
Yeah.
And him and Monica go out and try to look for this missing person, and they find that it's not a missing person, it's a missing town of Westview.
Right.
And a lot of the theories have been it's in New Jersey, so they officially say it's in New Jersey.
Yep.
And they find the shimmer.
Shimmer.
Monica gets sucked in. All of that is really cool. Like, outside setup for what we got in the first couple of episodes.
Yeah, because they send in a drone that looks a lot like the helicopter that Wanda found in the rose bushes in the very first episode.
Yeah.
So now you know where that came from.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense now why it was it was a piloted drone instead of just a drone, and all that kind of stuff. When Monica goes and tries to play with the shimmer, she gets sucked in. So then that explains why Monica is in there.
Right.
And as that's all going on, they bring the 24 hours later, and Sword is taken over.
Yes.
The facility, and they bring in a bunch of experts, and one of them is Darcy Lewis.
Yep. Doctor Lewis. Now, thank you very much.
And she's the one who figures out that there's a signal within the signal that they're finding.
Yep.
And then they proceed to reenact Contact.
Yeah.
I love
Are we recording?
Contact.
We never stopped.
Like everything they did from when she finds the signal to when they start recording, like that whole sequence is what happens exactly beat for beat, almost word for word in Contact.
When they first find the signal within the signal
yeah. And
Contact.
all of that is just amazing to me. We could spend an hour talking about that. And then they do the research to kind of figure out what's going on, and they start putting together that it's a TV show, and they start trying to identify the people in the show, and they start realizing that the people in the show are actually real people in the real world.
Yep.
Who live in Westview. So that's one of the official, like, okay, now we know.
Yeah, that was one of the theories actually right before this episode started, because we had heard that theory, and we had both kind of said, this is the one I like the most.
Yeah,
this
it makes the most sense. Yeah, absolutely. And the more that we go along, the more you realize this is Wanda's universe. She's building it. She's doing all the work for it.
It's not Sword. It's not like we had speculated before that she had lost her mind or whatever, and Sword was kind of containing her. This was all her, all on her. Nobody had any idea she was even doing this until Wu and Darcy show up.
Dr. Lewis.
And Dr. Lewis. Monica. Sorry, Monica show up. Monica.
Rambo.
Yeah.
Right. I got where you're going. The whole sequence of them watching the show and learning that these people are actual people who are trapped inside this little pocket universe, and that it feels like maybe Wanda's kind of controlling it, but it's not really kind of officially figured out until later in the episode, where they show Wanda exiting Monica out of everything, and Monica comes back to the real world and says it's Wanda. It's Wanda.
Right.
And I just laying all those breadcrumbs out during this episode, and then at the end putting a pin, and this is what it actually is a nice little capper from the beginning of.
So when they were doing the board and they were identifying all the players and putting their pictures up, did they ever do Agnes?
They didn't do Agnes, and they didn't do Dottie.
Okay.
They mentioned Dottie because they showed the other end of the scene where they're standing next to the radio when they're having the PTA meeting. Right. And so they're the fact that they show Dottie but don't identify her or Agnes. They do everybody else. Right. Except for the doctor. I might have to watch the episode again.
Oh, they might not have done the doctor. Okay.
But he made a point of saying in the last episode that he can't go to Boca Raton, because small towns you can never leave.
Cabo San Lucas. I don't know.
Bora, whatever. It doesn't matter. He can't leave. Yeah. And so, but them identifying everybody outside of Dottie and Agnes is really interesting.
So I don't think the doctor showed up until the Brady Bunch episode.
Right. She's the one. He's the one who checks on her and says, "Okay, you're 4 months pregnant." And then
but I don't remember him being in the first two.
I don't either. No.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. And
they don't say anything about the fact that she's pregnant.
Darcy says, oh, look, twins. And Jimmy kind of like, what? And she's like, what? I'm invested. I'm invested in the show.
Right.
So
But
they never really kind of mentioned that all of a sudden she's pregnant from one episode to the
yeah,
next. Yeah.
yeah. And like, why is she having babies in this? Like, nobody brings that up. That would kind of be like, why is she having a baby?
That's
What is
really
going on with that?
interesting kind of like, yeah. I told you that
More questions.
there's a ton more questions, and my brain is trying to wrap around everything
And then
that's going on.
and then, and then there's Vision.
So yeah, you get the scene with Wanda exiting Monica from her dream universe or whatever, and she comes back and realizes that she needs to fix everything, so she goes full Harry Potter and rearranges, makes everything fix again.
Right.
And as she's doing that, Vision comes in and she turns around and he's gray and he's missing the Mind Stone.
Yep.
And it's a kind of a quick horror flash, like you're seeing the monster. It's like a quick, like maybe 5 or 6 frames. You're not on it long enough. You're on long enough to recognize it, and then they switch back and look at Wanda, and then she looks again, and he's back to his normal.
I think she actually looked at him twice, because she saw him and she looked down. She looked back up and he was still like that, and she looked down again, and then then she looked up and he was fixed.
Okay.
So
I just remember it being really short, like it was a flash of him standing there more than it was anything else.
Yeah.
It freaked me out. Like, I'm like, what's wrong with him? And then my brain like, oh yeah, he's dead.
So did she bring his body in there with her?
Right.
And she has reanimated him,
right,
and disguised him, camouflaged
him. My theory from last week, which was, I think he's I thought somebody had put her in this dome to kind of control her,
right,
and it's obvious that now that she's built this dome because she can't deal with whatever.
Right.
But I had thought that they put some part of his AI inside the program that was kind of in this bubble.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering now if with her, if she brought his body to Westview with her, and there's parts of his AI that's still conscious, functioning or whatever, because whenever he's not with Wanda, he starts questioning what's going on in this utopia.
Right.
And then whenever he tries to bring it up to Wanda changes the script and rewinds the episode.
Yeah.
And makes them redo the scene. And even in this episode, they sit down and at the end of the episode and say, Wanda says, "What should we watch tonight?"
Yeah.
And you could see Vision kind of concerned, and then he perks up.
Yeah.
And it's almost like there's 2 versions of Vision in there too. One body with 2 different personalities fighting against each other.
Yeah, because
I still think he's the key.
Maybe. I don't see. We don't know if he was still, just because he didn't have the Mind Stone, that he was dead.
He was still Jarvis before the Mind Stone.
Right. He was still a AI or whatever before.
And that's the Soul Stone. So if you take the Soul Stone out, he's now just
a robot.
Jarvis.
Yeah.
Just Jarvis.
Yeah.
And
just an animated AI. Yeah.
So I find that very interesting. Like, this is
and then what happened? So Wanda. Okay, so this is after everybody comes back. So she is in the fight, right? The endgame fight.
She gets blipped back too, and she's in the fight
because she's there's the whole girl power scene with all of them.
She's the one who makes Thanos start firing upon the field itself,
right?
Because
so this is 3 weeks after that.
So they make a comment when Monica goes back to Sword, that she's the first one to show up in the 3 weeks since the blip, the unblipping, the unsnapping.
So something happened.
Something happens in that 3 weeks.
3 weeks that
I wonder. I wonder if now that she's had the time to. I mean,
She got blipped right after Jarvis or Vision
Yeah.
got whatever killed or whatever unstoned.
And you have the whole funeral scene for Tony.
Tony.
And her and Hawkeye talk about they both are looking over us and stuff.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if that's the beginning of her coming to the realization that that it's real, like that Vision is gone. And if she makes a point of, now the conversation has to be, well, it's not actually that far. They're at the Avengers facility in New York, and then they end up and then she ends up in New Jersey.
Right.
So maybe she just picks up Vision's body and and flees, and they go to, and she decides to.
Right, assuming that they, after the snap happened, they took Vision back to the Avengers facility, which would kind of make sense. So she goes back to the facility after Tony's funeral and loses
Somebody
it?
tries to counsel her, or that's a really interesting kind of question going forward. Is, did somebody trigger this where, like, not on purpose, like something happens and somebody triggers her at the Avengers facility, or what's left of the Avengers facility. Actually, they wouldn't even be there. They would probably be in somewhere else.
That's right, because
it's gone. And the Avengers Tower in New York is not Avengers Tower anymore.
Right.
And so that facility is gone. So now she doesn't have anyone there because everybody's trying to deal with their own poo. And she decides to build her own.
If she does have
welcome to speculation talk on.
If she does have Vision's body, where did she get it from? Because if it was in the Avengers facility,
it was actually in Wakanda.
Well, it was, but
yeah. So then, where is it?
They're not just going to leave it.
See what happened with this episode? It brought up so many more questions.
Right, and we've got like 2 weeks, like a very, very small window between, the Tony's funeral and when this happened.
When this happens, yeah.
That something had to have happened.
And I'm wondering.
So it couldn't have been like her babies died because it was 2 weeks.
Right, exactly. Wonder if she came back. If she comes back pregnant, she was pregnant before everything happened, and she comes back pregnant, and the reversing of the snap causes her to miscarriage, or the stress of everything so then she loses her children. You have the whole House of M story arc that everybody's been talking about, which has made a ton of sense if you put all the red string together. Using the House of M to be the reverse of saying no, more mutants, to try to bring more mutants into the world, how you bring the X-Men in. But I don't think that's what's going. After this episode, I don't think that's what's going on.
Yeah.
This is Wanda dealing with grief, is what this show is about.
Yeah.
And escapism to get away from everything.
Then you wonder what the babies have to do with it, because
she wants a utopian life with her love, and that would be
twins.
Twins is Twins is a direct reference to the comic, right? But
right,
it's still,
why? Well, I mean, I guess she was a twin, so
she
that
was a
would
twin, and
maybe be in her mind.
And then there's
twins.
all kinds of rumors about what's going on in future episodes, and I'm wondering if it's Mysterio, not Mysterio. Mephisto. If it's him or Grim Reaper or whoever it is trying to harvest her power, I wonder if they try to bring Petro back in some version to try to make her fall down the rabbit hole even further, knowing now that somebody from the outside world can come in and be changed inside this world. They even showed it with the beekeeper who was a sword agent sneaking through the pipes.
Right. And then his costume changed because he sort of looked like a beekeeper when he came into the pipe.
Yeah. And so I'm wondering if something like they try to bring an outside force in, and it ends up being Petro Like this episode's 34 minutes. We've done 20 just talking about it, and there's a whole bunch more that we could talk about.
Yeah.
And it's just this is why the show is so good, is because you had 3 weeks of this sitcom-y, bubblegum with like little hints or whatever, and then you have this episode where you're like, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
It is Wanda controlling this universe because she can't deal.
Yeah.
And that's and
with what or why we don't know.
Yeah. So,
but 2 weeks. Something happened in 2 weeks that sent her off the rails.
Yeah. So here we go. We've been really good about. I'm really glad that they don't do trailers for the next week's episodes, because I don't want to know. I'm loving this.
Yeah.
I'm loving this. We will go back and binge it all together, but the week-to-week thing and speculation has been a lot of fun. I don't want to do this with all of my shows, but I'm really enjoying it with this.
Well, and this is a limited series. It's not like we're gonna get season after season.
Right,
so
exactly.
Let's draw it out as much as possible.
We're doing the same thing with The Stand right now. So let us know what you thought of this episode and our reaction and review and discussion and everything else that we dealt with this episode in the comments down below. Please be nice. We've said this multiple times. We don't know the comics. We're only coming from it from the MCU point of view, and enjoying creation that is being sent in front of us, so engaging the story that's being told. So be nice in the comments, like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, and follow us on all the social media stuff: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Links are in the description down below. And until next time, cult members, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Shots.